welcome to the Whaler Guy Show. We're here at 2028 Sargent Street. We're in Hartford, Connecticut. And this show is dedicated over the last six seasons. It's been 6 years now we've been doing this show, Jerry Irwin and I, Peter Hindle. And, after 6 years, we're still talking about the Whalers. We're still getting a lot of people calling us and talking about the Whalers. They want to hear from you guys, so if you do have a good Hartford Whalers story, give us a shout. My name is Peter Hindle, and my email address is phindle, Hindle is the last name, 19, so it's number 19 at gmail.com. You can also reach Jerry Irwin at JerryErwin 013 at gmail.com. And we were thinking about getting together a show and doing a show about maybe having people come on the show or have people tell their stories about the Whalers and how they hope they come back and what some specific stories, because there's a ton of great stories out there. I had written a story a few years ago for Examiner.com, unfortunately, that is no longer around, but I made a Hartford hockey Mount Rushmore. So, you hear about Mount Rushmore, and it has the four presidents on it. You got George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Teddy Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. And, about a couple years ago, there was a fad of, the Mount Rushmore of this team or that sports team, or the Mount Rushmore of, a particular, type of craft. So, you pick out the four guys or the four people who were most influential. So we did a Mount Rushmore of Hartford hockey. So it's not specifically Whalers, because the Whalers were here for 22 seasons in Hartford. The Wolfpack are about to start their 22nd season in just a month. Today is actually September 6th, and the home opener for the Wolfpack is 1 month from today. I believe it's October 6th. That's a Saturday night. Where they'll be playing the Charlotte Checkers. So that hockey's 1 month away finally. So that's why we're, in the summertime, it's not a lot of hockey talk going on. It's a lot of preparation for the season. So we thought we'd talk today about the Hartford hockey Mount Rushmore. And, as we put this out here, you should send us your Hartford hockey Mount Rushmore. Who are the four players? Now, we kept this particular one to the ice. Players on the ice in Hartford. And their contributions to the city, to the teams they played on. So we started off, of course. You could take one or two of these two players. It seems like these two players will always be on your Mount Rushmore of Hartford hockey. But we start off with one of the captains, Kevin Dineen. Of course, Kevin Dineen is probably the most popular Whaler that ever put on the uniform, excluding maybe Gordie Howe, of course. But the issue is Dineen, played 2 stints with Hartford. So his second stint, he became the captain, but he was sent to the Flyers in a deal and then ended up returning. But Kevin Dineen is definitely up there in Hartford hockey because there's number 11 wherever you go today. People wear number 11. That was his number. Of course, he started off with the number 29. He is the hockey guy for Hartford. Jeff Jacobs, several years ago, called him, John Wayne on skates, and that was particularly probably over one event when he scored what we think is probably the biggest goal ever scored in Hartford hockey, and that was April 23rd, 1986, when the Whalers were in a semi-division matchup against in the Adams Division against the Montreal Canadiens, and they were down 2-1. And it was a home game at the Civic Center, and most people remember that Kevin Dineen took the puck at center ice, made a quick turn against the grain of the play, and went around this Hall of Fame defenseman Larry Robinson for the Canadiens, and then popped the puck over the left shoulder of Patrick Waugh, who you all know has won many, many cups, and he scored this goal and gave the Whalers their win to tie the series at 2-2, force a Game 5 in Montreal. And the building, the XL Center, which was at the time, the Hartford Civic Center, went absolutely crazy. I mean, he had plenty of big goals like that. He was a scrapper, a very scrappy player, never say die type of player. Kevin Dineen played in the better part of, I think it's 5 or 6 seasons in Hartford. And he also was responsible for playing 587 games as a Whaler, and that includes 235 goals, 268 assists, and 503 points. So I was looking this up. I guess it's almost a point a game. I think it was like 0.84 points a game. And he did this also all while battling Crohn's disease, which he's very active in trying to help find a cure for. Crohn's disease, even 30 years ago, there wasn't as many treatments. And you remember Kevin Dineen missed a great part of a season due to his illness. But, to have that disease, to have the perseverance to play, and to just captivate a whole city the way he did when he played here. And of course, more infamously famous, I guess I should say, is Kevin Dineen's final speech at the last ever Hartford Whaler game on April 13th, 1997. He scored the last goal for the Hartford Whalers. So he's definitely a Mount Rushmore guy. We put him up there. The second guy you can even switch with him would be Ron Francis, of course. And Ron Francis is the ultimate captain of the Whalers. He was captain for part of 10 seasons. Played in Hartford for 10 seasons, and scored 821 points. With the Whalers, and there were some really awful teams that Ron Francis was on. He wore number 10, and of course started with number 4. But he was a big two-way center, and when he retired in the NHL, he was among the top leaders in assists. I think he was third behind Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier. Ron Francis was just the statuesque guy. He was, the captain. He was the best player on the team. He got a 100-point season in Hartford, which is difficult to do when you have teams that are not performing that well. Ron Francis is a stoic character in Hartford in terms of how important he was. And as soon as he got traded, he won back-to-back Stanley Cups with the Pittsburgh Penguins and Mario Lemieux, and you knew that he was a championship type of player. He was one of those guys that belonged on a Stanley Cup team, and unfortunately it didn't happen with him in Hartford, but ironically he came back and played with the Carolina Hurricanes, which of course is the Whaler franchise, and now is the general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes. And I should mention also Kevin Dineen is still involved in hockey today. He is the assistant coach for the Chicago Blackhawks and has won a cup with them. With Joe Quinville, the head coach, another Hartford Whaler. So we're on Francis, 10 seasons, that 821 points, and he has the most games played as a Whaler, 714. If Babe Ruth is the icon for the Yankees, Ron Francis is the icon for the Whalers. Ironically, Babe Ruth had 714 home runs, and Ron Francis played 714 games as a Whaler. It's the most ever. I think Dineen is second with 587 games played. So, probably no one's ever going to break that record. Francis still leads the Whalers in these categories at 557 assists and 264 goals, and games played 714. So, Ron Francis, Kevin Dineen, he got half the Mount Rushmore filled. Our third one is an easy one, actually, kind of. While he only played 3 seasons with the Whalers, Gordie Howe is, he's Mr. NHL, he's Mr. Hockey. They call him that for a reason. In my opinion, he's the greatest player that ever played the game. Like a type of a 5-tool player, where he was aggressive. He could check, he could hit, he could pass, he could shoot. He could set up plays, and he was a rough and tumble guy. So there was no pushing Gordie Howe out of the way. His tenacity. On the ice, even playing through 5 decades of hockey, is just remarkable. And in 1977-78, he and his 2 sons left the Houston Aeros and came to Hartford at about the time that the team moved. The Whalers used to be the New England Whalers in Boston, and they moved to Hartford as the New England Whalers. And they signed Gordie Howe and his sons Mark Howe and Marty Howe, and they all came to Hartford. Howard Baldwin put this whole deal together, and it put Hartford on the map in terms of the NHL, because in 79-80, the Whalers went into the NHL, and here you have the return of Gordie Howe to the NHL. For a long time, he left the Detroit Red Wings in 1970 and hadn't been in the NHL for 7-8 years. And at the time when he signed with the Whalers, he was 48 years old. And here he is now. It's 1979-80. The Whalers are, changed that logo. They get the greatest logo ever made. They have the greatest player who ever played. And, Gordie Howe played 80 games in that 79-80 season at the age he turned 51 at the end of the season. So, that's something that'll never be broken. The oldest player to ever play a hockey season happened right here in Hartford, Connecticut, in Gordie Howe. And Gordie Howe put Hartford on the hockey map by, it's pretty much like if you could imagine, Michael Jordan coming to another team, kind of later in his career, or these incredible players, over the last couple of years. I mean, Cal Ripken Jr. Maybe see him on another team. It was, a player that's really remarkable. And of course, Gordie Howe is a Hall of Famer even before he retired, really. Yeah, Gordie Howe, and bringing his son Mark Howe, who was also a Hall of Famer. Played some time in Hartford, and Marty played some time in Hartford too. Wasn't a huge fan of Hartford, but him and his father, and in one particular time, Gordie Howe gave an assist to his son Mark Howe in a playoff game, and even in the playoffs, Gordie Howe played a couple games with the Whalers in the playoffs, and 9 games, and he had like 16 points. In his final year, he even scored 41 points in 80 games. I mean, for a 51-year-old guy, getting a point every other game. In an 80-game season, it's just remarkable. So he's our third guy for the Hartford Hockey Mount Rushmore. And the fourth selection I have is Ken Jenander. Ken Jenander, he's the former coach of the Hartford Wolfpack, started in 2006. He was just let go in favor of Keith McCambridge, who's now going to fill the Wolfpack coaching duties. But before his coaching days, Ken Jenander was with the Ranger organization in Binghamton. And when he moved here to Hartford, when the team moved here, after the Whalers left, the Hartford Wolfpack moved into the XL Center, and Ken Jenander was the captain, and ended up winning a Calder Cup for the AHL here in Hartford. Has the second most games played of any hockey player in Hartford. Ken Jenander, let's see, he had 599 games played at the XL Center. So you think about it, I mean, like, wow, 500, not at the XL Center, but 599 games played for the Wolfpack in Hartford, representing Hartford. While he did that, he had 160 goals and 180 assists and 347 points. Remarkable guy. Got plenty of times to ask him questions after Wolfpack games. He was pretty serious, and he brought a lot of players up through the ranks, players that went on to the NHL. A countless number of people, and all the time while he was playing in Hartford, he was the captain and led that championship Calder Cup team, and also he was inducted into the Connecticut Hockey Hall of Fame in 2012. It was a little bit bittersweet for Wolfpack fans this season as they go on with a new coach. They have a new general manager, Brian Leach, who grew up in Connecticut, and Brad Richards, 2 former Rangers, have joined the Ranger organization again to help develop Wolfpack players. So this season is going to be kind of interesting with a whole new coaching staff from top to bottom. And it'll be the first time in 21 seasons that you don't see Ken Jenander somewhere within the organization. So Ken Jenander is the fourth person, hockey guy, really. We're talking about on ice people for the Hartford Hockey Mount Rushmore. We can also change it into Mount Rushmore for off the ice. I mean, you could put El Grasso, the governor who helped bring the Whalers here, Howard Baldwin. William Barnes, who was crucial in helping Howard Baldwin bring the New England Whalers from Boston to here. There's a lot of ways you can have fun with this Mount Rushmore. But send us your Mount Rushmore, and we'll post them on our social media pages. If you're interested in that, you can send us a message. We're at Whalers Brigade on Twitter, and also search for Whalers Brigade on Facebook if you'd like to see more of that. I'd like to talk to you guys about the new team in town is the Hartford Yard Goats. If you've seen the stadium that the Yard Goats have, this was, of course, their inaugural season. It was supposed to be last year, but there's some interesting things here from the hockey standpoint, because here we are talking about a new team in Hartford, and it's a neutral affiliate, Colorado Rockies, and of course you have the Hartford Yard Goats with the Whalers color scheme, and again, it's an inaugural season. Everybody was curious about this ballpark, and they did very well this season. They only had 68 home games, but in that 68 home games, they drew 395,196 fans. So almost 400,000 people came out to see the Hartford Yard Goats and see that stadium, which we've mentioned over and over, that has so many amenities that you end up spending more time walking around from place to place and missing a lot of the games sometimes. So, a great season, an inaugural season. Most likely these things tend to taper down a little bit. I mean, I don't know if they're going to pull 400,000 again next year, but I think that most of the feedback from people that come and go to this stadium is that it's a unique experience in terms of AA baseball. I don't think there's really a park that is like the Yard Goats. Of course, they won the best ballpark in the AA contest, and they also won another award for a great ballpark in America. So it's really something to see, and considering all the pain and griping that people have gone through. 400,000 people in 68 games is an average of 5,812 people. That's something the Wolfpack would kill for, to get something like that. 400,000 people. They usually tap out at 170,000. Of course, they do have only 38 dates, but that's incredible. And their 395,000 is best for second, and people drawn in the Eastern League. The Reading Fightin' Phils were first by, I think, about 16,000 more than the Yard Goats. And also, the Yard Goats had 41 sellouts. In 68 dates, you had 41 complete sellouts. I mean, that's pretty incredible. That's almost a sellout every other game. And we had weather issues. We had weekend games. And, the stadium also became a great place for UConn, as UConn played South Carolina there. The UConn played Japan at a game there. And I was surprised to see about 3,000, 4,000 UConn fans come out to the Yard Goats ballpark to see UConn play there. So if you didn't make it this season, the Hartford Yard Goats are definitely something to see. It gives you a good idea about, hey, if you build it, they will come. I mean, 400,000 people coming into Hartford is pretty impressive. Don't forget, that ballpark was a parking lot 2 years ago. So you're not getting 400,000 people to come see a gravel parking lot from a building that was torn down, 30, 40 years ago. So, it works. It's and I know these 400,000 people, maybe not, a lot of them drove home, but a lot of them did come into the city and, went to the local bars or restaurants or maybe, downtown, walked down a little bit. So, these are the type of things that need to happen in Hartford to, help make it an NHL city again. This is a good test in the waters. The stadium had a good run. I know that the Yard Goats are pretty happy with how everything's turned out this season, and it's going to take a little while for Hartford to rebound. But it's definitely a positive. So, also wanted to talk to you guys about the license plates. So we did get a ton of signatures on the license plates. We got more than 2.5 times of the signatures we needed. So we did submit all of the signatures for the license plates, but some of them actually weren't from Connecticut, and that made it kind of interesting. So I think Lindsay's got a graphic here of the license plate to throw up, and what we did was we took all of these signatures and we mapped them. So every signature had a signature had a town and a zip code they were located from. So in this first picture you see now, there's a graphic of where all the signatures in Connecticut came from. So we had well over the needed amount of signatures. We needed about 400 signatures, and I think we got close to 1,000 signatures. But of all the signatures in Connecticut, you can see that the encompassing interest in getting a Hartford Whaler vanity license plate. These are all the people that signed up for them. And if you look, we had a show about the Knowledge Corridor once, and if you don't know what that is, you can check it out online. Check out Knowledge Corridor. This is the I-91 corridor, which includes Hartford and a few counties in Massachusetts. And there's a bunch of universities, and they're trying to market it as a region, really. So to market to, because you have so many universities and people going to school and getting degrees and then finding work in the area. So you can see, if you look at this map here, Interstate 91 kind of goes up the middle of the state, and up and down that is a ton of signatures from people all over Connecticut. So we expect some good lines at the DMV starting this January 1st, 2018. You can sign up and get your Whaler vanity license plate, and the proceeds from that will go to the Connecticut Children's Medical Center. We wanted to present this plate, and because the Whalers had donated to the Yukon Children's Cancer Fund, we thought it'd be nice if we could give something charity back, because when the Whalers left, that charity went with them. So hopefully a lot of people buy license plates, and hopefully it helps out the Connecticut Children's Fund. But I wanted to show you also a map of New England. We have the next slide here. We have is a map of New England. These are all the signatures pretty much from the Northeast. You can see some in Ohio and Pittsburgh area, but all through Massachusetts. I mean, Western Mass is Whaler country. The Bruins are just even though the Whalers been gone 20 years, Western Mass is still tons of Whaler fans coming from the Western Mass area, where they come march with us in the parade. You can see as it goes up through New Hampshire and Maine and Vermont, just how many people signed up for these signatures. Now, the signatures of people out of the state of Connecticut, made them not valid, so we couldn't use them in the petition to the legislature. However, I thought it was just fascinating to take a look at this, and we mapped out these signatures, and you can see where they're coming from. And our next slide is actually from the whole country. So we took, mapped these out, and you can see that, you got people in Washington and Oregon, and of course, and even in LA, there's some Whaler fans, Texas. All these various areas where people signed up to support us, I guess, in a way. You could say, even though we're not really going to be able to get a Whaler plate unless they move here, but they can definitely keep watching this show and stay tuned. So we've been like I said, this is going to be our start of our 7th season doing this show. So we're looking at doing a lot of things, trying to get some shows downtown. We want to have a show with a live studio audience. Maybe you guys can come in, ask some questions. We're working on getting some great guests. We're actually talking to Chris Lawrence of the XL Center. He works for Spectra. That is the company that actually owns the Philadelphia Flyers. They run the XL Center. And Chris Lawrence is in his 5th year of a 10-year contract to run the XL Center. So we'll talk to him about some events. Guns N' Roses coming to the XL Center October 23rd. Big concert season. So we'll have to see how that goes. And don't forget, of course, we don't want to forget about it, but we have the new ice sheet and new dasher boards. So the XL Center is NHL ready ice. We have ice that is good for any hockey team in the world, pretty much. So while the rest of the building is not NHL ready, at least the ice and the dasher boards are. So we've got to keep moving forward. That the latest on any XL Center renovations rests firmly on the shoulders of the legislature, who has not passed a budget yet. I think we're one of the only states left. I think Wisconsin didn't have a budget. Beginning to wonder if we're just the only state that doesn't have a budget. And without a budget, and especially without a budget, with any money going to the XL Center, that's going to really dampen any hopes to get the NHL back. The XL Center needs that money, and they did cut back from the $150 million they were proposing to go into the XL Center. Now they're down to around $75. So that's in the budget, the $75 million. And if it goes to the XL Center, then that means next summer they can possibly get some more renovation work done, get something, make the building more NHL ready, and show an interest in a team. So we're already out of time. So anyway, keep in contacts, and check us out on Whalers Brigade at Facebook. And you guys have a good night. Take care. I got a red light. I'm not sure if it means